Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Fortinet Initial Research Show. We are back. It has been 2 weeks. This is the opening week, opening Sunday for NFL football. But most importantly, I'm back. Well, the PGA Tour is back, but more importantly, I'm back. I'm sure you missed me. Probably not. But like I said, it's been 2 weeks. I had an unexpected additional week off. It was good to just kind of unplug, get a lot of things done. In that 2 week span, I turned a year older, shenanigans down in Huntsville for a baseball tournament, did some minor upgrades to some of the stuff in the background of the stream and the content. But I'm also going to be updating and refining some of my, I don't want to say research, but I guess my formulas, and most importantly on Wednesday nights, my rankings, trying to incorporate a different thing into the rankings and so on and so forth. So I will be experimenting with that all through the fall. Moving forward, I would be very appreciative of any feedback and all that stuff, comments in chat, all that good stuff. I've got a little note card here for my announcements in the intro. Like I mentioned, doing some improvements and such. I believe when I had to update my computer software, I think some of my settings reset in OBS, which is the streaming software that I use. So might have to deal with a little bit of that this evening, and I'll have that changed for tomorrow. But an important note, next week I will be doing a full week of shows. It is the President's Cup next week. So Sunday, research, Monday, data dive, Wednesday, DFS Tactics. Thursday night, I will plan on having a show. Now that show will be very late in the evening, probably around 11 p.m. Eastern. But I do plan on having a show. It'll be more laid back, more fun. It'll have my final predictions, my rosters, and who I think plays what event, who's partnered with who. We did this for the Ryder Cup last year. It was a lot of fun. I think chat had a good time with it. So I'm planning on doing that again, but it'll be a very, very late show on Thursday evening. But there will be a full week of shows, and I'm open to doing a Tuesday night show next week if there is enough demand for it. So if you would like to see a Tuesday show, by all means jump in chat or put it in the comments of this video what kind of topic you would want to cover on a Tuesday show, whether that's specifically the players or just the course. Something other than what we normally cover in the research and the data and the DFS. So I'm open for suggestions, but I will definitely have the Thursday evening, predictions and the more laid back roster format and guessing and all that stuff, and have a good time with that. So I think that's going to be it for the beginning of the intro. I hope you've had a very good 2 weeks. And your tour championship went a lot better than mine. Mine was an unmitigated disaster. There's no way around it. I planted a flag on Sahith Theegala. That didn't pan out very well. I was very high on Corey Connors. That didn't pan out well. Rory was too damn popular to make up for all of my shit picks. It just wasn't a very good DFS week for me at the tour championship. When you have a small field like that, you just kind of have to take some risks. I took a risk on Theegala. It didn't work. It happens. But we're going to try and start off 2023 a little better. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. I tell you it's the best resource out there, and I truly believe that. Look, there are a lot of great resources out there. Fantasy National isn't the only one. I truly believe it is the best resource out there. So go check them out. It's well worth your investment. I would not be able to do what I do without them. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and Discord server that I've created recently. Most specifically, I want to mention Twitch. For the foreseeable future, at least in the fall events, Twitch is going to be where I do a lot of my research on these Korn Ferry Tour grads. Last year, I feel like I put way too much emphasis on them in the first few events until they started getting some PGA Tour rounds under their belt. So instead, I think an improvement that I am thinking that I should make is just to consider the Korn Ferry Tour grads separately, and I will be doing that via Twitch Monday and Tuesday, maybe a little bit Wednesday, but I'm really trying to get that finished Monday and Tuesday. So make sure you give me a follow at Twitch so you don't miss the notification when I go live for that research. If you don't have Twitch, then feel free to reach out in the other forms of social media. If you have a specific question or anything like that, I'll be more than happy to answer it. But I am doing a lot of my Korn Ferry Tour grad research via Twitch. I also do some other things on Twitch. If you have some questions around DFS baseball, I've been doing a little bit of that in my 2 weeks off. I occasionally will play a game. I'm just kind of hanging out, doing my math nerd stuff. So if you want to join me, if you want to see that research that I mentioned, just come hang out, jump in chat, just have a good time. But I wanted to specifically mention Twitch, but Instagram, Twitter, this is where I place my betting cards for the golf tournament each week. And it's also where I try to put some research. So I'm definitely going to be doing that. Hopefully tomorrow, might be Tuesday, as I'm playing a little bit of catch up from these 2 weeks off. But I will definitely have some research posted around the Fortinet this week. So that is all of the things about social media. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open, as you can tell from this seemingly 30-minute intro. Jump in chat. I want to hear from you. How did your Tour Championship go? How did your 2 weeks? How have you been these 2 weeks? What are you looking forward to at the Fortinet? I'm quite excited, as we'll get into for various reasons. But as I mentioned earlier, my PGA Tour or Tour Championship DFS was an outright atrocity. It was terrible. So we're going to try to start 2023 off on the right foot. So let's do that and cover the initial research for the 2023 Fortinet. And we come over here to Fantasy National, where I was doing a little bit of research. I had meant, sorry, let me get something out of the way because it's going to make noise. I had meant to have this up here. So here is the GCSAA tournament fact sheet for the Fortinet. Now let me make sure I have all of my chats up, all of that good stuff. Sorry, like I said, my settings were reset since I had to update my software on my computer, and then OBS updated. It was a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. So let me make sure I have everything up. But anyway, this is the GCSA tournament fact sheet. For the Fortinet, we are at Silverado Resort and Spa in Napa, California. It is a par 72 that measures to just under 7,200 yards, on the official listing, 7,123. We don't have a lot of info in terms of water and bunkerage or anything to that effect. Greens are bent, overseeded with POA, and we're going to be taking a pretty good look at that, considering historically Fantasy National has listed it as POA. The past 2 seasons it's been bent. So I'm starting to lean that we're going to be looking at bent grass putting, but again, I would be interested to hear your all's take. And then fairways and rough is bluegrass and rye in the rough. You've got some Bermuda, POA, and rye in the fairways. This is a Ben Harmon original design, renovated by RTJ and Johnny Miller, so nothing in terms of architect to work on in Fantasy National. So what we're going to be focusing on, definitely short course. We'll see that this course has played somewhat easy and has played easier as the years have gone on. So we're definitely going to be looking at short, at easy, probably bent grass greens, all of that good stuff. Not a lot of information to go on, but I wanted to make sure that I brought this up for you. So now we move to Fantasy National. And one of the reasons that I am excited for this tournament, and specifically around this field, it seems that a lot of players are taking the John Rahm approach from last season, playing in the Fortinet the week before the Ryder Cup / President's Cup. And I think that's great for golf. I think that's great specifically for the Fortinet. A lot of these fall tournaments get, I don't want to say overlooked, but a lot of the bigger names don't play in them. This is usually a time when the Korn Ferry Tour grads try to make a lot of points. A lot of people that, or a lot of players that are, in between the 75 to 150 mark, wanting to make sure they get the season off on a good foot, all that stuff. But you see here, Max Homa might be a bit of an outlier or a special case. He is the defending champion after all, so it's very rare that a defending champion doesn't come back to the tournament. Now he is playing next week at Quail Hollow, but like I said, he might be a special case. But you've got some big names here that are playing next week. Corey Connors, Taylor Pendrith, Cam Davis, and the biggest one to me, Hideki. Hideki's here. So that's 4 of the 12 at least. And there's more lower that are playing here at the Fortinet that are essentially going across the country in a week to play at Quail Hollow next week. And I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for the Fortinet that we get some of these bigger names here at this tournament. Even if they don't, they're probably treating it as a warm-up, to be fair. They're probably treating it as a tune-up for the Ryder Cup, or for the President's Cup, excuse me. They're probably not too terribly concerned about making the cut. But even so, it just makes the tournament more interesting. So I'm happy to see that. I do not recognize a lot of the American team President Cup players. Max Homa might be the only one. He's the only one up until the Korn Ferry Tour grads here. But anyway, so at least from an international standpoint, they seemingly are taking this as a tune-up. So just because I am tuning up, forgive the cheesiness, I'm sorry, that's terrible. But normally we start with a little bit of a high-level look. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of filters here. You see that I have this in the last 3 months, 36 rounds. I think there's maybe 2 or 3, 2 players that have 36 rounds in the past 3 months. Again, I just kind of want to see who played well at the end of the tour season last year. And you'll notice that I don't have the Korn Ferry Tour stats selected. It's just the PGA Tour. So players like Ben Griffin, Michael Kim, MJ Dafu, I think it's Dafu though, Thomas Detry. These guys that are Korn Ferry Tour grads or coming over here from the DP World Tour, their data is definitely going to be skewed, and that's why I'm going to take a look at them individually or by themselves on Twitch. That way I can get a feel, at least until they get a certain amount of rounds on the PGA Tour under their belt. I just kind of have to take them in a vacuum. I think is the best way to approach them, that crop of players, because it definitely didn't work out last year for me when I tried to consider stats from both tours. But anyway, so the first thing what we know about Silverado is it's short. It's less than 7,200 yards. It's barely over 7,100. So in the past 3 months. I don't know if this is going to be enough rounds. That's only 2 tournaments. Let's go ahead and expand that out to 6 months. I think that should be a little bit more. It's not great, but again, I don't want to go back too far. I'm just trying to get a little bit of a view on who was playing well towards the end of the PGA Tour season. So on short courses, and again, short courses are defined by Fantasy National as less than 7,200 yards. On short courses in the past 6 months, your top performers are Max Homa, Corey Connors, Matthew Neesmith, John Huh, Adam Long, Ryan Armour, Ben Griffin, Chesson Hadley, Troy Merritt, and Matt Kuchar. Not a whole lot of surprise here. Homa, his one performance was at the Wells Fargo, which he won, so that makes a whole lot of sense. Corey Connors generally plays shorter courses well. The Wyndham played well. Wells Fargo was mediocre, I believe. And then the Heritage he played very well. But again, not a whole lot of surprise here. You know, trying to get used to these players like Ben Griffin, who's a Korn Ferry Tour grad. He played the Wyndham, but he's got a lot of stats in the Korn Ferry that we're going to have to look for. Other players, say where they go, players down here. Michael Kim, Austin Eckroat, who's had a start here and there, Justin Suh, Taylor Montgomery, Detry Defoe. That's why I'm going to have to just treat them in a vacuum as I keep mentioning. But there's a look at the top performers on short courses. So before I go any further, let's go ahead and take a look at the course breakdown. And I apologize, I need to minimize that. That's driving me crazy. I had something running in the background that was catching my eye. So I do have the President Cup team rosters up here, just in case I forget. I haven't familiarized myself with every single pick. I know a lot of the Americans by heart. I don't know the internationals by heart. But anyway, so I have that up off to the side when we go through some of these statistics. But Silverado Resort and Spa, specifically the North Course, there are quite a few birdie opportunities. But you'll notice here, there's not a lot of eagle chances. 2.2% is fair. It's a decent chance at an eagle, but it's the highest one. Now, yes, it is the easiest hole. There's a lot of birdies here. Almost 50% birdies. It plays to 4/10 of a shot under par. A third of a shot under par. 3/10 of a shot under par. This course generally is pretty easy. And the first thing I like to do is go to the 9th and 10th toughest holes, see where par is. If it's in between 9th and 10th, that's exactly average. You see the 9th is still under par. You go to the 8th, it's right a bit over par. So basically at 8.5, at hole 8.5 would be par. A little bit on the easier side, at least on the scorecard. But I want you to see, for example, the toughest hole only plays to 1500ths over par. You got 1300ths, but you got a lot of these higher single digits in terms of the more difficult holes. And then, you've got, like I mentioned, the 4/10, the third, 3/10. You've got a few in the 400ths and 300ths. You'll see when we actually, I'm just going to cheat, come down to this historic cut line. It's never been above par. And recently it's gotten as low as -4. Now it's generally hovering in the -2 range, which is technically average, but certainly on the easier end of average. But there's a look at the scorecard. We'll take a look graphically. And one thing that I definitely got wrong last year is I underestimated how much of a short game course this is. You can see here putting and approach are almost identical. Stroke skin approach is slightly higher. But around the green and off the tee are essentially identical. So that plays to essentially an identical course. Short game is actually outweighing ball striking just a bit. Normally, ball striking has a decent advantage on short game. So even though they are close in terms of relation to each other, in relation to other courses, this is a short game focused course. The putting, the around the green actually is a lot more important than the average tour event, as we'll see later on in Microsoft Excel. There's the top 10s. You move to the top 5s. Putting and approach still heavily outweigh the other two. Off the tee and around the green are still basically neck and neck with each other. Off the tee does gain a little bit, but it's still, slightly, but still a short game course. It's when you get to the winners where they're hitting their irons and driving the ball well is when it becomes a ball striking course. So for the top 10s, top 5s, we're going to be looking at short game. Now, tomorrow or Tuesday when I post the research for the Fortinet, I'll probably be focusing on just the winners for your betting cards. But in terms of just talking about Silverado, talking about the field, talking about DFS, we're going to be looking at short game. So that is a look at the strokes gained by shot type. You go to strokes gained by hole by par. Again, don't be swayed by the graph here in terms of the bar. You have to look at the axis, your y-axis. This is only 15 hundredths. The other two are at 12, or essentially 13 hundredths. So it's very, very even. It's very even. So this means that par 5s are getting mitigated a little bit, because normally par 5s heavily outweigh the other two in terms of shot type, strokes gained by hole by par. That's for the top 10s. Top 5s, again, still pretty evenly spread. Par 5s are gaining a little bit. Par 3s are falling. When you get to the winners, that's where they really take advantage of the par 5s. And the par 3s really kind of start to diminish in importance. So as you climb the leaderboard, it's more strokes gained approach, or specifically the winners, strokes gained approach off the tee and par 5s, just to be expected. But that's only for the winners. So I'm going to bring this back to the top 10s. You look at the whole composition, we are going to heavily focus on this because it is almost a direct parallel. There are 3 par 3s from 175 to 200. The other one is 200 to 225. So 75% of our par 3s come in this range. I'm going to tell you right now, that's the range of par 3s we're going to want to look at. Par 4s, 6 of the 10 fall from 400 to 450. We're going to be putting a lot of scrutiny into this range, 400 to 450. And then similar to the par 3s, 75% of your par 5s come from 550 to 600. The other one is short. We're going to be putting a whole lot of emphasis into this. This graph, sometimes it can be misleading. This one is not. This is the higher, the concentration of style of holes, say par 3s, 175 to 200, par 4s of this length. It stays true here at Silverado. And then the approach shot distribution, we'll definitely take a look at this too. It is, again, a wedge fest. This course isn't long, and the guys tend to hit the ball further here. So it's all about your wedges, your short irons. So we'll see if proximity in this range here is a big factor. We talked about the historic cut line a little bit earlier, but to emphasize the easiness of the course, you've got 20% birdies, you've got 13% in bogeys, and about 1.5% doubles. So if you stack the doubles and the bogeys on top of each other, it's about 20% birdies and 15% bogeys plus. Again, more easy than not. Driving accuracy, less here. And that's a lot of the reason being that guys know that the rough isn't penal. Guys are trying to hit it far, as you see here. The average driving distance, a little over 285. The average tour event, 282. So a lot longer here. It doesn't sound like much, but it is. It's a lot longer. Therefore, accuracy less here. Not really a big concern. Greens are a lot easier to hit here. And that's something that we didn't get on the GCSA tournament fact sheet. We didn't get green size. We didn't get a stimp, anything like that. So it's a little difficult to say why the greens are easier to hit here. Other than perhaps extrapolating that the course is easy. Whatever the reason is, if greens are easier to hit here, then greens in regulation aren't a big factor. If more guys are able to hit greens in regulation, then you need to find something else that is separating the winners and not. Scrambling percentage. Scrambling is easier here as well. 60% of players are able to successfully scramble versus essentially 58% at the average tour event. So scrambling's not it either if players are able to scramble here as well. We come back to like 3 putts per round, lower than the average tour event here, so we're not going to be looking at 3 putts per round. Distance we talked about. Green in regulation proximity, just under average tour event. So, it's not really even proximity. That's a big factor. So I think I found a couple of things that we can focus on this week, but it's not going to be proximity, or at least total proximity. There's a hint. Not going to be total proximity. It's not driving distance. It's not driving accuracy. It's not greens in regulation. But there's a look at the Fortinet, the Silverado Resort and Spa from a scorecard and graphical view. Definitely going to keep that up and open. I have 2 things of water ready so that I avoid my best Chris Collinsworth impression tonight. And if you don't get the reference, I'll just say Sunday Night Football. I'm not watching, but I've heard it is rather comical. But anyway, so we come back to the main page here, the main view in Fantasy National, and let's start going over some things here. It looks like the past 6 months might suffice for some of these. I was really hoping it was going to be 3 months. Let's take a look at, I clicked average. I meant to click easy. That's what Rust will do for you. Apparently we're going to look at all the difficulties because I can't effing click what I want to. So we're going to look at everything. 2 weeks off and everything goes to shit. All right. Scoring easy. 21 rounds in the last 6 months. It'll kind of have to do. Again, I just don't want to go back too much further. Before I get into the putting, let's actually look at the historic conditions here and show you what I'm talking about with the POA versus bent. So in 2022 and 2021, Max Homa, your defending champion in 2022, Stuart Sink in 2021, those were classified as bent per Fantasy National. And again, I'm not on the course. I wouldn't be able to tell you why it's classified POA versus bent. That's an overseeding grass type question or answer. I don't have it. I'm not going to bullshit with you. I just don't have it. So, according to Fantasy National, the past few years have been bent. The rounds previous, or the tournaments previous, was POA. Since going to the Silverado Resort and Spa, you can see it was on bent when they were back at Cordovale in 2012, 13, and 14. But since the tournament moved to Silverado, it was classified as POA. The last 2 years, it's been bent. So I'm going to be leaning towards bent. Although Max Homa being a California guy, POA would make sense as well. But I'm going to lean bent and focus on bent this week. But put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Are you thinking it's bent? Are you thinking it's POA? Would be curious to hear your all's take. And something else that I just saw, last 2 years, it has it's measured average length or medium length, 7,200 to 7,400. So if I'm going to be consistent and look at bent, maybe short course isn't the right way to go. Maybe it's not the right way to go. And that's why it's always important to look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet, but also look at different years to see how they've adjusted the course. If you just see 7,123 yards, which is what the scorecard is listed on the GCSA tournament fact sheet for Silverado, you would think there's no way it can get to 7,200. But every single round of the past 2 years has been 72 to 7,400. So that's very interesting. That makes me really question whether we want to look at short courses, actually. And this is why I do this with you all, because I'm researching with you all as I'm going through this. Now, I certainly put in a little bit of research, but I am generally kind of digging deeper, not looking into something, kind of overview like this. But it's right there in front of you. Anyway, so most of the time it has played less than 7,200, but if I'm going to be classifying as bent, maybe we don't look at short courses, or at least not nearly the emphasis that I thought I was going to be. But the reason I was going with easy, you can see here, the entirety of 2021 was easy. 2022 played more average, but it was definitely on the easier side. But it has gotten easier as the years have gone on. So you see a couple of difficult rounds, more average, a couple of easies in here. So it's gotten easier as the years have gone on. So that's why I'm going to be leaning easy. We also saw the birdies versus bogeys and doubles, the cut line. That's also good indicators of how easy or difficult a tournament or a course can be. So I'm going to be leaning bent. I'm going to be leaning easy. I guess I'm not going to be putting too much emphasis on short now, seeing this. Very interesting. But anyway, I wanted to make sure I brought this up. That's why we're going to look at the putting the way we are. So, fortunately, we have had a lot of tournaments recently on bent. Let's go. Yeah, that's a lot. Let's see how much is in the last 3 months. Don't think enough. Well, there's a lot here. Yeah. Now, you know what? Let's just do 6 months. Keep it consistent, because that's what we've done with the others. I'm sorry, I'm coming back here. Do they have speed? Yeah. So it's been average speed, no matter if it's POA or bent. It has been average with 1 round of fast last year. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to look at average speed greens. So with that, let's take a look at average speed bent greens. And there's going to be a whole lot less rounds, just because of the average speed filter. Let's see what these rounds are. You've got the Wells Fargo, Byron Nelson, Memorial. Generally, the Memorial is lightning. So to see it at average speed is quite surprising. The Barbasol makes some sense. Okay. You know what? I'm going to take the average speed filter off. I think it's just too narrow with the lack of rounds that these players have. So, on bent greens in the past 6 months, no speed filter. Again, no speed filter, just bent green performance. In the past 6 months, your top performers are Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Justin Lauer, Austin Cook, Bo Hostler, Max Homa, Maverick McNeely, Patrick Rogers, Chesson Hadley, Vince Whaley, and Callum Tarrant. Let's take a look at Max Homa here. Since this has been classified as POA and bent, I mean, you can see he's a California guy, so it makes sense for POA. Absolutely. And that's why he would putt well, or at least that would be a a feather in the cap for Poa, because he generally putts Poa well, and then obviously won last year. Tour Championship, that is Bermuda. BMW was bent. St. Jude, I believe, was Bermuda. Memorial's bent. Charles Schwab bent. Wells Fargo's bent. So he has been putting extremely well, whether it's Poa or bent, to be fair. So historically, he's not a good putter on bent, but I think it's still bent. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's bent, and if it classifies as Poa, I'll just be wrong. That's where I'm at with it, and that's why I don't like having a course that is, say, bent and Poa or Bermuda and Poa. That goes into granular level of detail that I just don't have, and I have to trust Fantasy National, and they would know a lot more than me. So there's your top performers on putting on bent greens. Again, we looked at easy. I'm kind of not wanting to do short courses anymore. There's no architect info to go with. Not going to worry about wind yet. I might look at it tomorrow night if I look at Wind Finder. Let's take a look at strokes gained approach. Even if strokes gained approach is mitigated in importance here, it's still my preferred statistic. I still think it's going to lead to long-term success. And this is a lot of the reason why I'm going to treat the Korn Ferry Tour guys in a vacuum. I want to see, specifically who was playing well in terms of strokes gained approach, who played some of these specific metrics that we'll look at later well, all that good stuff. But your top strokes gained approach players in the past 6 months: Chez Reavie, Brendan Steele, Lee Hodges, Stefan Jaeger, Mark Hubbard, Corey Connors, Luke List, Hideki, Davis Riley, and Alex Smalley. So when we go to the tournament history, it makes a whole lot of sense. Chez Reavie up here, Brendan Steele up here, Hubbard has played this event well in the past. It makes a whole lot of sense that these names are rising to the top for the Fortinet. Makes a whole lot of sense. Let's see. We'll take a look at strokes gained around the green. We saw that this is a short game course. So your top performers in strokes gained around the green in the past 6 months: got Andrew Putnam, Danny Willett, Stefan Jaeger, Vince Whaley, Matt Kuchar, Chris Kurt, John Huh, William McGirt, Jonathan Bird, and Bill Haas. Now, it's important to differentiate strokes gained around the green with scrambling. Scrambling's a whole different monster, and we're not going to be looking at scrambling. We're going to be looking at specifically strokes gained around the green. Max Homa, generally not a very good strokes gained around the green player. He had a very good week at the Fortinet last year and won. Good weeks happen. Luke List putting. If he ever has a decent week putting, he's going to vault up the leaderboards. So anyway, there's a look at the what I call the overview, or the main page here at Fantasy National. Let's take a look at this tournament history. And this is going back 5 years of the tournament. Fortunately, they have all been at Silverado Resort, so there's no need to, to kind of differentiate or cut off this data. We've been at the same course. In those 5 years, Chez Reavie is your top strokes gained total player. In those 5 years, he's got a top 5, actually a tie for third. He's got a top 15, and he's got 3 other, solid to middling finishes. He's just played this event well. Nothing astronomical except for maybe 2021, but he's just been solid here. Brendan Steele makes a lot of sense. You're a winner in 2018. Now he's had a couple of clunkers, a couple of middlings, but again, strokes gained approach makes some sense. But he probably had a very good putting week in 2018 because he's not one of the best he's not a good putter, much to my chagrin at the end of the season last month. Let's see, Kevin Streelman has 3 very good finishes and a missed cut. However, I want you to take a look at Stuart Sink. He's played this event 1 time. He won it with 13.5. So if you're talking about total, yes, it's Chez Reavie. If you're asking per tournament, average per tournament, you're not going to beat Stuart Sink. If you've played a tournament once and you won it, I don't think there's a way you can get better. Let me know if you want to correct me. But I don't think there's a way that you can play one tournament and finish first and be better. I don't know. But there's a look at some of the guys that play this event really darn well. Harry Higgs, solo second, top 25 and a missed cut. Let's see, you've got Maverick McNeely has played this event pretty well. Tom Hoagie, surprised to see because he's not a very good putter either. He's all in stroke gain approach. Now Patrick Rogers is the opposite. Patrick Rogers is a very good short game player. That makes a lot of sense. Mark Hubbard, Andrew Putnam, the short game narrative, absolutely. Like Max Homa, his win, but he had 2 clunker of made cuts before that. So there's a look at the guys that play this event well. The other end of the spectrum, let's see who does not play this event well. The first name that jumps off to me, Denny McCarthy. For as much as this is a short game course, seeing Denny McCarthy down here is surprising, but some guys just don't like courses and how they're set up. I mean, Denny McCarthy, 0 for 4 in his attempts here at Silverado. Robert Shreb, 0 for 3. Vaughn Taylor, 3 for 4 in making the cut. They've all been clunkers and then a missed cut. It's interesting to see. So don't be fooled by the 3 for 4. He has not played this event well. John Huh, 0 for 4. Hank Lebiota, 1 for 4. Let's see. Sung Kang, kind of the same deal here. He's 3 for 4 in making the cut. I want to give this a middling finish. 2 clunkers and a miscut. Martin Trainer, 1 for 4. So there's a look at the guys that do not play this event well for whatever reason. Again, it's really surprising to see Denny McCarthy up here, but numbers don't lie. So there you go. There's a look at the tournament history, and I have the color-coded chart for you all in Microsoft Excel, so don't worry about that. Here is the previous leaderboard. We're not going to get too much into it tonight. You can see I was doing a little bit of research around proximity. Let's take a look quickly at strokes gained. That view, you can see approach still fairly handy, but I mean there's a lot of bigger numbers here and around the green. Off the tee, somewhat important. So if we check just by each one, like off the tee, you got a clunker, you got a couple of middling finishes here, decent correlation. Approach, again, for strokes gained approach, yes, you have a 3rd and a 6th, but a 51st, a very clunker of a made cut. Sam Ryder, a clunker of a made cut. This is not very strong correlation, specifically on strokes gained approach. Around the green, you take out Bill Hawes here, and his very good performance. I mean, this explains it all with Bill Hawes. He just didn't make a putt last year, but look at these performances on strokes gained around the green. You got a top 15, a top 5. Bill Hawes' miscut. You got a middling, top 15, top 25, middling to clunker. You got a lot of higher finishes here for strokes gained around the green. So we're going to be looking at that a lot this week. And then putting, it's just the most important thing here. You have to, if you take out Nick Taylor, goodness gracious, look at this. You take out Nick Taylor, what is this? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So of the top 14 finishers, of the top 14 finishers, In putting, in last season's tournament, all of them finished inside the top 25 with the exception of Nick Taylor. I mean, he still made the cut. He didn't hit his irons well. He didn't do anything well except for putt, and he still made the cut. But look at everybody else. Brendan Todd, 22nd, and Lipsky, 22nd, are the lowest finishers of the players that finished in the top 15 in putting at last year's Fortinet. That is some very, very, very strong correlation. So we're definitely going to be looking at putting around the green with the emphasis of a short game course. Very interesting to see. I'm going to bring us to this view real quick, and we'll cover this a bit more in Microsoft Excel, but good drives gained, which is a combination of fairways and greens. This is not very strong when you got missed cuts high up here. Now, yes, you do have a third from Mito, but a middling. This just isn't very strong correlation. Fairways alone, not really. 3 high missed cuts there. Greens, again, you have some pretty high finishes, sure. But you also got some pretty big double digits. A missed cut. Missed cut here. Clunker. Greens aren't all that strong that I'm seeing. Distance, no. Champ missed the cut. All of these guys made the cut, but nothing spectacular of a finish except for maybe Bo Hostler. And then you go a little further down, Wyndham Clark, Peter Uihlein, Luke List, Gostkowski. So what I'm getting at here with this view, this page, I don't see much into it. I really don't. And again, I'll be doing a whole lot of research. We're going to cover this a lot in the data dive tomorrow. We'll go back a few more years historically, but I don't see anything in this one. Birdies and bogeys, this one's going to be pretty easy to spot. You look at the birdies, 8.8, a lot of high finishes. Bogeys, 6.8, and you've got a whole lot more double digits up here. And you even have a missed cut up here. So we're definitely going to be looking at birdies. So let's go ahead and do that. Birdies and bogeys. So in the past, let's narrow this part in since I'm not going to do a specific filter for this. In the past 3 months, your top, let's do birdies or better because eagles they do happen here, just not very often. Your top birdies or better players in the past 3 months. Cam Davis, Adams Vinson, Trey Mullinax, Taylor Pendrith, Taylor Moore, Nick Hardy, Emiliano Grillo, Maverick McNeely, Scott Piercy, Michael Gligic, and Stefan Jaeger. Really, Scott Piercy is the only one that is, when you factor in birdies alone, that would fall precipitously. And he doesn't fall that far into 20th. Like Chesson Hadley would rise, John Huh would rise, but we remember he hasn't played this event very well at all. So something to be mindful about. But I always like to look at opportunities versus birdies or better, or birdies or whatever we're looking at for the week. Somebody who has not given themselves a lot of opportunities, but has been converting, I'm a little bit wary of, because eventually, if they don't give themselves a lot of opportunities, 1 week their conversion rate doesn't matter if they're not going to give themselves opportunities. Hopefully that makes sense. The 1 or 2 kind of special cases that I consider for these guys are Denny McCarthy. There he is. I just saw him. Denny McCarthy, he doesn't give himself a lot of opportunities, but still converts pretty darn well. The reason I consider him an outlier in this specific regard, in terms of not a lot of opportunities but converting, he's a world-class putter. That is why I give him the benefit of the doubt in this certain regard. But generally speaking, I'm pretty wary of the players like Nick Hardy, of McNeely, of Gligic. Putting doesn't matter if you're not giving yourself the opportunity for a birdie. Like, you're putting for par instead of birdie, is what that amounts to. The inverse of that is guys that are giving themselves a lot of opportunities just not converting. Players like Chris Goddard, players like Kevin Streelman, although he probably falls into the Luke list, and I'll explain that here in a second. Lucas Glover, Charlie Hoffman, Jim Herman. Most of the time, I would be more bullish on these guys. I'd be much higher on them. Corey Connors, Smalley. But there are also exceptions and special cases in this category. Luke List is the prime example. Luke List is a world-class ball striker. Hits his irons immaculately. He can't make an effing putt. It's bad. He's really, really bad. And the 1 week he has a good putting week, he wins. Or even if he has a middling putting week, he still finishes in the top 10. I mean, he is a world-class ball striker. You know, PGA is very tough, 41st, and that's a week where he didn't ball strike it well. Memorial, very tough. I'll be generous, top 25. If he ever putt, he's going to be in contention. But he's the special exception. He's the inverse of Denny McCarthy. If I trust Denny McCarthy's numbers because he's a world-class putter, I trust Luke List's numbers because he sucks with the putter. So I'm more akin to not be high on Luke List because of the terrible putting. But, you know, somebody like Chris Goddard, he's not a bad putter. He didn't end the season well, but he's not a bad putter. He's been basically field average. This is a guy that I would be focusing on because he has given himself opportunities. He just hasn't made them. It takes one hot week with a putter. Like Alex Smalley would be another example here. I don't think he is a terrible putter. He's not great on bent. I mean, he's not Luke List bad. He's not the best, but he's not Luke List bad. So, you know, Smalley would be somebody I would be keen on maybe taking a longer look at. So, I always like to look at opportunities and who's been converting and back and forth. But there's a look at that. We're definitely going to be focused more on the birdies. Maybe birdies are better. Definitely going to be looking at birdies. Actually, I'm kind of curious. How did the Eagles look? Gligic. Not really. Maybe it's just birdies. Especially since this, I mean, it has played easier, but it's not easy every single round, every single year. Interesting. I might just do birdies, but that's what tomorrow and Tuesday's for. I'm just going to be into the weeds of the data. All right, so let's look at par threes real quick. We have 3 of the 4 that measure in this range here. But you notice that Max Homa was negative a lot in that range. He was negative on the par threes in general. And we saw that as you rose on the leaderboard, the importance of the par threes started to diminish. Here's the top 10s, top 5s. Again, it looks bigger, but again, pay attention to your y-axis, and then the winners falls off. So, with that, we're not going to put a whole lot of emphasis into par threes, but if we do, it would be this range here. So, let's see. In this range, I mean, yeah, Roger Sloan was a miscut, but, you know, you've got a lot of top 20s, a middling from Nick Hardy, some good finishes here. You look at strokes gained par 3 in general, okay. Nothing jumps out. It smacks you in the face that it's an obvious correlation, but it's okay. So if we do that, let's go to par 3s. Your top performers on par 3s, let me make sure I don't have any filters. Nope. All right, in the past 3 months, your top performers on par 3s measuring 175 to 200 yards. Those players are Cam Davis, Chris Stroud, Hideki, Taylor Moore, Chesson Hadley, Max Homa, Lee Hodges, Ryan Armour, Doc Redmond, Mac Hughes, and Dylan Fratelli. I realize that I have been going for an hour and I still have Microsoft Excel to show you, so I'm going to be kind of speeding through this part, and we'll really go into this tomorrow in the data dive. But par fours, we saw that the majority of the par fours fall into this range here. I mean, look at Max Homa, 10.7 in par fours. It's just extremely important. He was very high in this range here. Also very high in the 350 to 400s as well. So the shorter par fours is what you want to focus on for tonight's purposes. And to get through this quickly, we're just going to look at par fours 400 to 450. So your top 10 on par fours 400 to 450. You got Corey Connors, Tyler Duncan, Andrew Putnam, John Huh, Cameron Percy, Chesson Hadley, Sean O'Hare, Adam Svensson, Ben Griffin, and Thomas Detry. And then finally, par fives, we have 3 that measure from 550 to 600. So your top par 5 performers on the par 5s of that range, you have Callum Tarrant, Luke List, Braden Wu, Emiliano Grillo, Matthew Neesmith, Cameron Champ, Cam Davis, Mark Hubbard, Patrick Rogers, and Kevin Streelman. So that is going to be it for Fantasy National. Let me bring up Microsoft Excel here. First thing I'm going to do, let's take a look at this comparison course data. If you're new, come by on Twitch especially. I will be more than happy to explain this in more detail, or leave a question in the comments. But this is essentially a comparison against the average of all of the full field courses. So you'll see the TOC is not in here because it's not a full field. East Lake's not in here, not a full field. So like off the tee, essentially average approach, not very important here. Around the green and putting are very important. Good drives gained looks like it's important. I have my doubts. It says here birdies and bogeys are also less important. I'm going to be focusing on the birdies. It's clearly more important than the bogeys here. How much importance do I need to put into the final mixed condition model? Not sure, but I'm definitely going to be focused on the birdies. But this is where it gets really, really good to kind of look at this. You see, par threes, not very important here. The range at 175 to 200 is the most important range here, except for maybe the 200 to 225. But remember, there's only one hole of that length here at Silverado. Do you want to put a lot of emphasis on one hole? Not really. So this is the more important length here. But you see, it's still not as important as the average tour event. Now, the par fours are actually par four total, mitigated in importance. All of the par fours not important here. And generally, par fours are very, very important. Like, look at Sanderson Farms in 2 weeks. Almost a 3/4 of a shot more important. You go at RSM, half a shot. Mayakoba, half a shot. But look at the range of the par fours that are most prevalent here at Silverado, at the Fortinet. Almost 3/4 of a shot for the 400 to 450. We are going to put a whole lot of emphasis on this metric right here. There's the fancy formula. But that metric right there, and a little bit of the 350 to 400 to be fair, but 3/4 of a shot more important than the average full field consistent course on the PGA Tour right here. 400, 450. And then similarly, the par fives. Par fives are important here. There's one par five that measures here. 3 of the 4 measure here, and they're almost a half a shot more important. So you can see the 2 metrics that graphically, and this is why I said when we were going through the course breakdown in Fantasy National, when you see these graphs, they can be a little bit misleading just because a course has more par fours of a specific range than the other doesn't necessarily mean it's the most important. Fortinet doesn't lie to you. These 2 are the most important of their respective par. The 400 to 450, the par 4s, 550 to 600 for the par 5s. Lastly, let's take a look at proximity really quickly. I have my doubts that total prox is going to be a big factor, but you see all of the short wedges are higher in importance. Not necessarily the biggest of importance, like you'll see the Shriners in 3 weeks. 100 to 125 is very important there, but it's still, somewhat important here. 125 to 150. I'm leaning towards these two, but this is what the data dive for tomorrow will be, is to get a really, really good feel for what proximity, if any, are the most important. But I'm leaning towards these two for this reason. All right, so there's that. Lastly, let's do what I call the early look file. This is the strokes gained total tab. The view is going to be skewed, but bear with me. This is this tab right here. So Chez Reavie, all of his strokes gained total, 29.7. That is being broken out by all of the stats, individual stats. Where's Chez Reavie? There you go. So that is what this is. That is what this chart and this spreadsheet is doing for you. So Chez Reavie, in the past 5 years, he's played this event 5 times. He's had an average finish of 22nd. He has not missed the cut in those 5 years. He has averaged gaining 0.8 strokes off the tee in those 5 years. 5.4 in approach. Exactly field average in around the green. Negative 0.3 in putting. So on and so forth. This is a good way to see the players who play this event well, where they have been gaining their strokes, essentially, on the field. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take out the players that have only played it once, just so we can get a feel for the guys who have played it consistently, played it well, all that stuff. So you see Chez Reavie, all of his in strokes gained approach. Webb Simpson putting. Okay. Scott Harrington, a Korn Ferry Tour grad. His isn't around the green. Actually, he's been positive in all. That's an interesting name to think about as you go about your research this week. Scott Harrington, Sahith Theegala. Interesting to see there. He's played this event twice. Cameron Percy. There's Andrew Putnam. Approach around the green and putting. He's played this event pretty darn well. 3 times. Average of a 32nd. Hasn't missed the cut. Good stuff there. Patrick Rogers. Around the green and putting. He's actually been pretty good off the tee. His approach hasn't been good. Tom Hoge. He's actually putt fairly well here, which is surprising because he's not a very good putter. Brendan Steele doing Brendan Steele things, but he's actually putt well. For him, he's putt well here. There's Max Homa, the defending champion. He has traditionally not been very good around the green at all. Not just at the Fortinet, but around the green player at all. He had a very good chipping week last year. So it happens. But he's been a very good putter at the Fortinet in general. Let's see, other players here. Fairways, but that's kind of Chez Reavie's game, so I don't put a whole lot of emphasis into that. But you see, there's a decent amount of negative and low positives. Fairways don't seem to be a factor. Distance really doesn't seem to be a factor at all. Not a lot, at least. I mean, Brendan Steele's, that's kind of his game. Rogers has actually gained distance here. Green's kind of the same. Not really the most important. But we'll take a look at birdies and bogeys. Let's see. Let's take a look at the top 20 of the players, the top 20 performers that have played the event more than once. Let's see. This average is 1.1 on the birdies. 1.4. So surprisingly, at least surprisingly to me, Bogeys were more important for these top 20 players, but you got a very heavy bogey here, or negative in the bogeys. Like, do you have a negative in here? Not really. Maybe a couple down here and further. Interesting to see that. But you got Ches Reeves, more birdies than bogeys. Scott Harrington. Now, Tagala's more avoiding bogeys, but Cameron Percy, Berwinski. Interesting stuff here. Again, we're going to look at the specifics of these par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Like you see, the par 3s just, there's not a lot here. There's just not a lot. 1.6 from Ches Reevy, like 2.3 from Zach Blair. That might be the highest. But you look at the 175 to 200s, it just doesn't seem like it's all that important. If there is a range, it's this one, but I don't know how much emphasis we're going to put into it. But par 4s, you can see this is where a lot of players are making their hay here. And look at that, 400, 450. That's a whole lot of concentration of green. Taylor, Rogers, Reeves played them well. Simpson, Putnam's played them well. Down here, Svensson has played them well. He's 2 for 2. See, others that have played this event well. Gligic, he actually hasn't been very good at the par 4s. He's been good at the par 5s. Homa has been good at the par 4, the short par 4s, to be fair, both of them. Simpson, Reevy, so yeah. Short par 4s. We'll look at par 5s. Not as important in terms of total par 5s, but look at the heavy concentration of green. You got your outliers here, Patrick Rogers, Nick Taylor, Michael Thompson, but there's a heavy concentration of green really high up here of the guys who have played this event very well in the par 5s, 550 to 600. And then finally, lastly, the proximity. It looks to me, well, I don't know. Looks to me maybe 100 to 125, although there are a lot less negatives in the 125 to 150. Interesting. 75 to 100 is kind of all over the place. You got some high green and some red. But we'll definitely be looking at this heavily or putting a lot more scrutiny into this tomorrow in the Data Dive show. I'll definitely be doing it on Twitch tomorrow as I research the Korn Ferry Tour guys and get into the weeds of the data of like I'm showing you here. But I think that's going to do it for the Fortinet initial research show. 10 minutes or so over time, but with that elongated intro, probably ends up being to an hour worth of show. Again, put it in the comments. How are your 2 weeks away? How'd you do? Did you play some, opening week NFL? Have you done some baseball? All these other things, put it in the comments. Also, put in the comments what you might want to see for a Tuesday show next week for the President's Cup. I'm definitely going to be doing the research, the data dive, DFS, have some fun late on a Thursday doing predictions and whatnot. But if you want to see something specific for Tuesday, put it in the comments or reach out to social media. A reminder, I wish I could nail down a time for you on Twitch. I just can't. I put it on social media when I'm going live. Give me a follow on Twitch. That way you get the notifications when I'm going live. And I'll be researching the Korn Ferry Tour guys. I can do a little bit of baseball, just a little bit of this. Just come hang out on Twitch as I prepare for the start of the new PGA Tour season. So again, thanks for tuning in and watching and listening. I always appreciate the support for the channel. I'm very thankful that you all allow me to do what I do, hopefully give you some good advice to use throughout the week as you research. So thanks again for all of the wagers that you have made in the 2 weeks I haven't been here, for all of the DFS contests that you have played in the 2 weeks I haven't been here. And until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.